Hey, stay at home mom family. It's your mom mentor and caregiver coach, Melissa. Happy Friday. I am so excited about my special guest that I will be have coming on here shortly. Let me see if I can bring her up. On and we will get started. Hey, there she is. Can you hear me okay? Good morning.
I can hear
So,
you. Good
everyone,
morning.
this is Kristina Andrews. Welcome to part 3 of the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast. It's your mom mentor and caregiver coach, Melissa. Happy Friday. I am really excited about today's episode because I think it's a really important topic that we're going to be diving into, not just from the motherhood side, but even from the caregiver side. Um, as moms, as spousal caregivers, one thing that we do experience is trauma. We can have trauma related to experiences that we experience as a mom or a caregiver, but those experiences can even be more intense if we ourselves have experienced trauma as a child. Okay. And not everyone, obviously, I know goes through a situation like this, but I think it's really important to just be aware of healthy ways of how we can communicate with our kids, with our partners, and just be aware that trauma is not just to domestic abuse or childhood abuse. Trauma can show up in other ways, shapes, and forms. And as a caregiver, we definitely still have traumatic experiences. I know personally for me, this week has been rough for me. My dad went into the hospital Tuesday night. I've been sick all week. I'm realizing that I'm entering a new season as a caregiver, being sandwiched between caring for my father and also caring for my chronically ill spouse. So trauma can show up in any season of life and in different ways, shapes, or forms. So I'm really excited and honored that Kristina agreed to be on my podcast so she can share her expertise of how we can manage this really touchy subject, if you will, better. And I just really hope that this really inspires you that you can learn to ride your bike again after trauma. So that is the title of our episode. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to Kristina to share a little bit about her. So Kristina, could you tell us a little bit about what you do, and why you were so inspired? Because let's face it, trauma is a touchy topic, and not everybody is willing to go there. So what really inspired you to put yourself out there and share your story that's really touchy and frankly a lot of people don't like to talk about?
Absolutely. And you hit it on the nose. It is a very personal thing. And it's very personal in the sense that we all interpret it differently. We all view it differently. And how we talk about it and the tone of our voice, the energy we have behind it makes a huge difference of how people can relate to us. With any point in a healing path, I do believe, because we're all human, we all have those moments where we kind of hit what we could
Mm-hmm.
call a rock bottom, where we have a choice of what way do we want to go? Where do we want to stay in this pattern? Do we not want to stay in this pattern? And I had that moment in my early 30s where I realized I want to make a change. And when I started my healing path, and I say this because it wasn't easy, there are still days where it's hard and it is scary work. But if you are willing to start that journey, beautiful things will open up. And my journey has led me to various tools that I use, various programs that I'm in, where I've been able to open my heart and soul and be able to see possibilities and see things in a different way. I think so often we see things in our culture, we're like, this is the way it is, and this is the only way it is. Now, for me, which is a leverage and also has it's a leverage for me, it's an advantage and a disadvantage. Now, I am naturally a free spirit. I don't do well in controlled environments. I'm very creative, but at the same time, I was raised in a family that was more comfortable in a controlled situation, that was more comfortable with things like this is how it is. And I was the one to kind of shake it and be the black sheep. And that's also another thing I've learned. So on the flip side, I've had to learn how to be respectful. of that, respectful when people need structure, they need rigidity. But at the same time, I've also learned for myself that's when I need to learn how to communicate and step back. And that's what really inspired me to write my children's series. And my first book is coming out in spring 2023. And of course, I have a gift for your audience. And through my healing, I realized the importance of talking about this topic, talking about communication. Because when we communicate, we're working with our feelings and we're communicating about our feelings. We connect on a different level. And the biggest thing that I've realized as I talk about my mission, I talk about my story, if we strip away everything, our nationalities, our genders, our sexual orientations, where we're from, where we live now, we all, our ages, we all work from the same feelings list. We all share humanity. And able to step back, because like, for example, like I'm single, I want to be married, I want the kids. And like you shared, you know, you have responsibilities to your spouse, you're a mom, you have responsibilities to your father that you're handling. Now, I lost my mom in 2019, and I realized like our paths are parallel and different at the same time. But when you have a sense of relatability, when you have a sense of just listening to someone and listening to, okay, let me see how they're feeling. Let me relate to how they're feeling. Let me listen to what they need. That's really huge. And it does take time to develop this. And that's why I chose to write about it in my books. And that's why I developed this pattern in my books where Bella, the main character, goes through transitions that we all go through, that we can all relate to, regardless of where we are in our lives. And she experiences things of negativity. And when she experiences negativity, she relates to either her parent or one of the adults in the story. And they open up to her and say, well, I still go through this. Not meaning when I was a little girl, this happened to me, or I was a little boy, this happened to me. No, they actually say, well, as an adult, I still get scared. I got scared when Daddy and I moved into a new house. I still need help snapping my necklace. And Bella's like, oh, you do. Again, it's that relatability. Going back to where I just said, that relatability. And then when she's able to overcome her fears with the help of through I usually put an object in there so there's a tangibility for both the parent and the child to see. She's able to help a friend go through that same transition or a similar transition and relate to it. And again, it's about relatability. Like, for example, in the bed book, Bella's big thing that she's shifting from is a crib to a big girl bed. Whereas, and then when her friend Annie has her fear, she's afraid of the slide because the ladder's so high. Bella's like, oh, this is like with my bed, me shifting into my big girl bed. You know, it's about that relatability. And to relate to each other, we're able to focus on the feelings. We're able to focus, oh, I get scared too. This is how I get scared. Or I'm happy too. This is how I get happy. And we're able to respect each other and hear each other. And it's really beautiful. And in addition to my books, is also why I'm so big on coloring. And I have a coloring activity for your audience. And of course, like for you and your family as well. And again, what I'm looking to do is beyond my books, provide you and your child or you and your spouse or your partner tools, or you can carry this beyond the story, where you can do something with your child in a calming way and relate to them, and also be able to adapt it to what works for your family. I mean, I'm an aunt and I'm a godmother, and every family, and I'm in and out of different houses. You know, I'm very proud, very grateful to have these children in my life.
Absolutely.
But everyone parents differently.
So,
you know,
I love what you shared there. There's so much good information there that there's so many. For one, we all do process trauma differently. So figuring out that first you need to face this trauma is the first step. But then also, like with anything, what I always say to my moms too, like in our motherhood and caregiving journeys, it's not a one size fits all approach. What works for me will not 100% work for you, but I can still share what I've learned and what has worked for me and tools that have worked for me. to give them a place to start, and they can then run with it, tweak it, do whatever they need to do to figure out what is their sweet spot for managing their motherhood and their spousal caregiving journey. And the same is true in life with that, again, with that relatability, like you were talking about, with dealing with trauma. It's not a one size fits all approach. It's going to look different. And also in seasons, because think about it, triggers are going to be different for everybody. So you could have 50 people in the same room with a similar experience, but the triggers of what's going to make them feel uncomfortable or bring up those feelings of unease, of irritability, of feeling unsafe is going to be different for everybody. And there's no timeline. We're not saying that you have, if you follow our plan X, Y, and Z, that you'll get instantly the result of A, B, and C. That's not the case. I am 2 years into my caregiving journey, almost 3, and I'm still learning. And I'm also entering simultaneously a new season with being a caregiver for my father. So there's that trauma. I think what has come up with me, which has been interesting over the past week, is there's that trauma of my mom passed away last year, and she went through chronic illness for 50 years, and then we lost her. And then the trauma of knowing that we would probably enter a season like that with my dad, but it's happening a little faster than I thought. It's kind of backwards. I thought, okay, he would start to have some short declines. We get him on home health. And then when he would really go downhill, then we would nosedive and transition to hospice and all those things. But it's happening a little faster than that. It's going in reverse. So he's had a bad flare-up. We put him in the hospital. Now we're looking at rehab. But then, okay, how do I get it to where I can get him back home to where I still take care of him full-time, to honor his wish of being at home full-time and me caregiving for him, just like I promised my mom to my dad. So the chronic illness and the chronic trauma that goes with being a caregiver, whether it is your parents, whether it's a sick child, whether it's your spouse, it hits you in different ways. And it's definitely been hitting me this week, is something very interesting that I've been noticing. And how we deal with it is different. I'm lucky I'm in a season where I have support, but for those who are dealing with the trauma from the standpoint of domestic abuse, childhood abuse, it still makes me frustrated that it's still so hush-hush. This is something that should not have happened to them, and it's not their fault. But we need, if we're going to say that it's not their fault and that they have nothing to be ashamed about, we need to really give them safe outlets to be able to talk about this, because if they bottle it up, it's not going to be able to be fully processed and dealt with. And I love that in terms of going from a parent to a child relationship, how you have used and leveraged resources, something as simple as coloring, something as simple as a storybook, to help parents who have been traumatized by trauma, domestic abuse, sexual abuse, whatever it may be, to have a way to relate to their kids and help to simultaneously heal, but also be able to be standing on their own 2 feet of saying, I do not want this to be a generational thing. I don't want this to be transferred to my children. And having this resource, I think, is amazing. And it's so creative, too, because that's another thing. We all do creative things. From me, I know I started in my journey as a blogger. I thought I was going to be a blogger. I'm not a strong writer. I really love doing intentional conversations like this, where we talk about things and I'm teaching and talking and sharing my story. And I love that for you are a strong writer. And so you are leveraging that strength to share your story and to help people. Because that's the thing. Again, going back to that piece, guys, what works for me or what works for Kristina may not 100% work for you. But the idea here is that we want to give you the outlet of, oh, there's this option, there's this option, oh, and there's another option. We just want you getting started, taking one small shift, one small step in the right direction to deal with trauma, to get organized around your home, to get a caregiver, to plan ahead and have your caregiving routine established so you're ready to go when crap hits the fan. We want you to be prepared, okay? And we want you to feel safe. Wouldn't you agree with me here, Kristina, that we want you to feel safe, that it's okay if you have hiccups along the journey. You're going to have triggers.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing too, is it is an evolving work in progress. Like what you said, something you said that was so beautiful is when you talked about your father, thinking it's going to be this way, and it's not. I lost my mom within a week of finding out she was stage 4 lung cancer, and she was gone. And I never thought that in 100 years that was going to happen. Like, if you told me a decade ago it was going to happen, like, you're crazy. That's never going to happen with mom. And I realized through my healing journey, it actually began about 6 years ago. And it is a gradual process. And think of the disagreement with my mom that led me to find therapy, because I decided, what, I can't keep living like this. Like, I need help. Like, something is wrong here. I'm beyond us. Like, I'm not getting emotional support from family and friends. They keep telling me I'm out of my mind, and I know I'm not out of my mind. There's something wrong here. And that's also where I was a trigger point for my mother, because I am the free spirit. I am the creative. I am the one that's very curious, and I'm a rebel. I will shake the boat, I wasn't doing it to better. I was doing it because, again, I sensed something was off. And when I think of my therapy journey, I was in therapy for about 3 or 4 years, something to that effect. And I think of the current work I'm doing right now, and that didn't come, the current work I'm doing right now came 4 years into my journey.
Absolutely.
So it does take time. And that's where my books, as like you said, planting that seed, that first step forward, because my healing is do 12-step work, and 12 work is very heavy. It can be very scary, but the results of it are very, very powerful if you're. And one of the biggest things I share with my 12-step work that I realized, and again, I realized this came to me very easily. So I am a Catholic woman. However, I am Italian as well. And however, my sense of faith and my belief in God came to me very naturally. Nobody told me, you need to do this. Like, it just was there. It always has been there. And that's why I focus on kids. Like, I do have a very strong sense of imagination. I believe I have a strong sense of imagination because of my faith. Now, the first step in your 12-step work is acknowledging that there is a God or a higher power. Now, that's a no-bueno for me. I'm like, of course there is, but I've learned to have patience with people that need time to get there. And that step is so important. The reason why it's the first step is, for at least from my interpretation of why it's the first step, is that when you acknowledge your higher power, in my case it's God, you let go of the control. You realize that you're not in control of everything. And when you let go of the control, you realize you have a choice as well as a responsibility. And when you realize you have a choice and responsibility, you have freedom, but you also have accountability as well. And when you have when you have choice, responsibility, freedom, accountability, you also are able to tap into those feelings. And feelings it is a skill to learn how to say, I'm frustrated. It is a skill to learn how to say, this really delights me. And it's also a skill, and this is something that I've had to work on, for me to say verbally to a family member, hey, this really meant a lot to me when you did this, or this really upset me. And also treating myself like I'm doing right now, to say it calmly. I was like, oh my God, you really upset me today. Or, oh my gosh, you made me so happy. No, keep it. Because I am a very energetic person. I have a lot of energy. But I've learned, if I say it more calmly, like I am right now, it is more effective, because I'm able to focus on the person I'm talking to, but also they're able to hone in on the feeling that I'm communicating towards them. And sometimes when I tell people this, how I turned to a family member and said, it really meant a lot when you complimented my cooking at Christmas dinner. And they said, well, isn't that already understood? I'm like, well, no, maybe not. I felt the need to take it a step further, because me and this family member had a really beautiful conversation, and I wanted to take a step forward, and I wanted to keep that conversation going. And so that's the thing too, is letting go of the assumptions. Oh, this person should know that. Oh, this person should know that. At the same time, there have been times in my life where I've gifted things to people. Like, for example, coming from an Italian family, I do all the Italian Christmas cookies. I can't tell you how many times people don't say thank you when I leave them cookies. And people make excuses. Oh, well, I was too busy. I'm sorry I didn't say thank you. But then to me, again, knowing I don't have control, knowing I have a choice and a responsibility, that's where I make the choice. Like, okay, you know what? This did upset me. It did hurt my feelings. And you know what? I made a choice to know, okay, you know what? They're not the friends I thought they were. So you know what? I need to readjust my thinking. I need to readjust my list. And it's not being mean. I'm not trying to say this because I'm trying to be mean. I'm trying to say it because I'm saying it because it's my choice to know, to see these cookies are really special. This is my heritage. This is my love. I want to choose to give it to people that will understand that right away. And if that list is smaller, that list is smaller because I'm making the choice to give to people that are really going to understand the meaning behind it. And it's not about being mean. It's about being really acknowledging your feelings, acknowledging what's important to you. You know, and it's the same thing with, in light of what you were saying, with your responsibilities to your family. You know, I have friends that also suffer from certain health things. And I realize like I've chosen to be friends with them. But at the same time, there is that balance of I can't be, yes, sometimes I'm upset when they're not available for me, but at the same time, it's like, well, you know, I did choose to be friends with someone that let me know they have these responsibilities, that let me know they do have these health issues that may prevent them from hopping on the phone with me at a moment's notice. And again, where I have to readjust my choices and my vision of our friendship. And it doesn't mean that they don't care about me. It doesn't mean they don't love me. It's different. You know what I mean? And that's also where the work I'm doing, the feelings work and the books I'm writing, it's planting that seed of taking a step back and acknowledging where people are and you are, you know, because you're not a bad person for not being available, but at the same time, you're also not a bad person for needing emotional support as well. You know,
it's that
so
balance
it's like
of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual support. And I know for me recently, I tapped into the spiritual support. I'm in a year-long program with my Christian life coaches for devotionals. That's been very therapeutic for me. I need that for my faith. And then tapping into a Moms Connect group in my church where we meet once a week. I need that. And then leveraging just having people to talk to in my family, and then people in our multiple congregations, because obviously my family is big and we all go to different churches. So just prayer change from all those different congregations has been therapeutic. So I think it's important. And also I think it's important to just normalize that you can have multiple ways of support. There's nothing wrong with that. And also more importantly too, let's normalize that it's okay to see a therapist or a counselor. So it is okay. And especially with, I know for me with situations, the situation I'm in, I have IBS and hypothyroidism, so my immune system can tap out and crash out. I think that's why I got sick this week. And then my husband has chronic illness. My dad has chronic illness. So sometimes it's not exactly ideal to go outside the home for those appointments. So guys, it is okay to leverage online services. So I had on my first two episodes, I had Dr. Francesca Obu. Shout out to my girl, her. She is a licensed professional therapist, and she helps spousal caregivers deal with the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual impacts of a chronic illness on their marriage. So there's multiple streams. And I want to just say that the benefit of a counselor, the benefit of a therapist is great because they have referrals and more resources in their pocket, like what Christine is saying with her family. Obviously, a lot of us, the no-brainer is to leverage our family for support and resources. But if they're not capable of doing that because there's been that trauma, that abuse, that neglect, they can't get it from there. So where are they going to find it? It's going to probably be from maybe a few close friends that they really do trust. It's going to probably be from maybe a support group within their congregation of faith. It might be a therapist or a counselor that really just has been with them from day one and walked them through some really fiery seasons in their journey to reconciliation with their trauma. So let's normalize that not everyone has the access to a traditional support system like what we have. And let's normalize that it's okay if they need, within whatever season you're in your journey, that it is okay to leverage different resources at the time. I'm certainly in a different season than I was 2 years ago. I know a lot more. I'm passionate about sharing what I know, but at the same time, I'm also at the tipping point of jumping into a new season myself personally. Again, going back to what's going on with my father, and that is okay. And I'm learning new things, and there's things that I'm learning to do with my dad that definitely can play into how I care for my spouse, with legal forms, things like that, that I know I can implement simultaneously. That I want to do, like, okay, I'm doing this for my dad. I'm going to do it twofold for my husband as well. So I'm good to go there and have that peace of mind and less stress for later. So to avoid the trigger and to avoid the more additional trauma, because that's the thing. How can we keep you guys at your baseline to where you can function and you're not just chronically stuck on the hamster wheel of being triggered, falling into a rabbit hole of deep depression, stress, and anxiety, and just reliving that trauma and those yucky feelings that you are not releasing, and just being stuck in this pattern of not being able to heal and move forward. Okay, so that hamster wheel can be vicious. So it's scary, it's overwhelming, but listen, it's not impossible. Okay, there's resources out there. If you are dealing with childhood trauma, Kristina would be awesome to deal with. If you're dealing with being triggered by all these unexpected seasons that are coming up with your spouse's illness, or maybe if you're starting to also segue into, I've always said that I'm a spousal caregiver, but I'm also learning that I'm also a sandwich generation with caregiving for my parents. I have one parent that has passed on. I have another one that has some very serious complex health issues, and I want to make sure I can advocate for him moving forward. So things change. They're not going to stay the same. Where you're at right now, I guarantee you, is going to be totally different in another year or even 6 months. And if there needs to be change, like Kristina said, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It doesn't mean that there's any shame in shifting your self-care routine, because remember, we can tap out and burn out if we don't put ourselves first. And there is no shame in leveraging other support. Okay, be it a coach and mentor like myself, be it an author with reading materials and coloring and other different creative avenues, let's use that word, creative avenues to help you deal with your trauma and anxiety and whatnot. There is nothing wrong with that. Okay. If for those of you listening or watching the replay or listening to this podcast later on, I want to hear what I'm saying. Trauma is going to happen in your life in one way, shape, or form or the other. And when it does, it's not your fault. Okay. And I would rather you be inspired by listening to this episode, whether it's now or 6 months from now, that it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And there's resources out there to help you, be it caregiver trauma like myself, or being a mom and dealing with some really traumatic situations from that. Maybe you're caregiving for a chronically ill kiddo. That's tough. Motherhood is tough as itself, but then you throw in caregiving in any way, shape, or form, be it children or your spouse, or also like sandwich generation like I am with parents. It's a lot. It takes the stress from here all the way up to the high heavens. It's tough. Or if you're just even trying to navigate your motherhood journey, but you have generational trauma like what Kristina went through, and she's trying to break it so she has a healthier, if the Lord provides that she does have a marriage and has children, that she is a healthy mama, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Because here's the thing, we're human beings in human bodies, okay? We're meant to have emotions. We're meant to feel frustrated. We're meant to feel angry. We're meant to feel scared. We're meant to feel overwhelmed, okay? We have to let those feelings go to be able to move forward, Okay. But then also on us that we take the time to step back and also implement structure. If there's anything that you get from this, structure is everything it's everything. It's everything in your journey to healing your trauma. And it's necessary in your journey as a mom. And it's totally pivotal to your journey as a caregiver. If you don't have a plan, if you don't have a way to cope, if you don't have systems in place, it's going to be a house of cards and it's going to crash and burn really hard. And it's not fun. I've done that the hard way. So please don't be like me. So listen to what we're saying. We want to help you. So Kristina, what are 3 tips that you would give for those who are listening if they're just, excuse me, if they're feeling stuck with how to even take that first step? I can understand that it can be scary to even just move your foot forward. You feel overwhelmed and it can feel just really scary trying to take that first step. So condense it down, but what are 3 simple tips that you would give our listeners for taking that if they're feeling scared about taking that step forward?
Yeah, I would say if it's a step forward with your child, like you said, that daily routine, reading child again, focusing on books like what that I am working on right now. I'm providing that focus on communication, that focus on feeling. In the back of my books, I also have a reader's guide as well, and where I point out things that I've read happen in the story and give suggestions. Again, because every house is different. Again, I go back to coloring, because coloring is a simple activity and it has the same effects on you as muscles. It also allows space for communication for your child to tell you about their day. The other thing, the other tip
Kristina, you're
I
breaking up
realized,
some. You're breaking up. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, can you hear me now? Okay, great. The third one I would say, I always say is toys. How does your
You're
child
still breaking up, Kristina.
react to their toy? Oh,
It's a little better now. Let's see what happens.
Okay, I'll hold the phone like this. The other one I say too is toys. How your child plays with their toy, how they relate to their toy. What kind of games do they engage in? If they engage with you, play is a very big thing for your child. It's a really great way for them to voice what they're going through, how they react to things, etc. And if they invite you in, playing and imagination are really big. And something that I learned from my therapist, and she actually commended me on this, because she said, I'm a grandmother and I'm a therapist, and even I'm not good at this. She said, you are great for kids because you know how to pretend naturally. Like, you jump right in. And it's true. Like, my nephews too, he hands me his plays up. I'm like, ciao, ciao, hello, yes, we're here. But they need that. And it's okay if you're not that kind of parent. You can engage other people, but it's important for you to engage other people with your children that can play with them that way. There's nothing wrong with that. Something else I would like to say is not really a tip, but it's more like a takeaway from my healing journey. Because when you said about making therapy normalized, I can't say enough how beneficial it was to see a therapist one-on-one, which led me to my work, because a therapist is a third party. And the other people share, especially if you're dealing with traumas, regardless of whether you're working through something with your spouse or your adult parents, or it's something with your parenting journey, we all have an inner child and we all have a critical parent. And ACA is both of them. So if you're looking for a therapist, even if it's counseling for your marriage or counseling for you and your child or your parent, or like with me, I was for interview work. I can't put it out there. I was fortunate to find my therapist had
awesome.
background in child work. That is
You're breaking in and out again, sweetie. Sorry.
Sorry. I've talked to a lot of people that have worked with therapists, and they work with trauma, but they don't
Right.
necessarily work with inner child work. And so I'm saying that because that's a piece that I've heard from other people. Because when I talk about my inner child work, they say, "Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Oh, wait, inner child work." And so that's like why I say that. I put that seed out there because it is very powerful. Because with traumas, the traumas that we experience do get passed on generationally. So those traumas that I've healed from and I still work through, they were passed on to me by default. And again, I'm not saying that to blame parents or to blame my past generation, but I'm saying it because it is reality. And again, going back to what I said about choice and responsibility,
You're breaking in and out again, sweetie.
I have a choice. I made a choice to. I'll hold the phone. I made a choice to work through my traumas, and working through those traumas, I I do choose to have a responsibility because I am an aunt, I am a godmother, and I want to be a wife, I want to be a mother, and I want to be a better version of myself. I made a choice to be a better version of myself, and I believe by making that choice, it's opened up this door for me to write and illustrate my children's books. It's given me the opportunity to create characters like Bella. And when the books do take off, it's also opening that door for me to find a way to create things that can extend to bigger audiences, etc. And most importantly, it's given me the opportunity to be here with you right now and to talk to you and your audience and to make this connection. And so it is very powerful. It's a very powerful step. So I'm grateful
Absolutely.
to be here.
I want to back up for just a minute. I really like how you mentioned about the benefit of third parties. Because that is the case. Because I've taught this too to my moms, is that, and caregivers, that, counseling and therapy is a good outlet because you're in a safe environment, privacy, HIPAA laws, they can't share anything that's not disclosed in the session. And sometimes, guys, we just need a third party because we don't need the biased perspective. Okay. Our families are good. If you're coming from a healthy background where you don't have generational or traumatic or neglect abuse. Okay. I'm saying if it's from a healthy standpoint, like what I've experienced. So they can be helpful, and as helpful and loving as they are, they mean well. But sometimes when we're going through a really hard season, we need that unbiased approach from a third party person that can really look outside the box that we're in, so to speak, and give us really credible, insightful help. Okay, because sometimes we need a third person, and sometimes, even if it's just to cry or shout or yell, we need a safe person that we know we're not going to trigger and overwhelm our family members. And that's okay. That's okay. That's why it's there. And again, going back to that other outlet of, it's a piece in the web. A therapist or a counselor can refer you to other things as well. And I went through some therapy too. I went through some depression and whatnot when I was in my early 20s, long before I was married, long before I had children, and really had to get into the realm of being a caregiver. And it was very helpful. It was really helpful to have that safe place to just talk things out and not be judged, and just have that professional point. Because here's the thing, therapists and counselors are trained to deal with these kinds of situations. Okay, that's what they're there for. But at the same time, relatability, though, I understand, is another piece. So that's where influencer like Kristina, who's been through trauma, who has been through neglect, has had to do a lot of inner work to heal her inner child, can be beneficial. That's where I come in as your coach and your mentor, as a mom, and as transitioning from workforce, dealing with, okay, how do I provide for my family now? What do I do? And then also learning cold turkey how to take care of a chronic illness that you've never had experience about, especially if you don't have a background in healthcare like what I do. And I say that with a grain of salt because even though I had a 15-year background in healthcare, guys, I still had to learn a lot. It felt like I was back in school the first 6 months. And 2 to 3 years in, I'm still learning, because the illness with chronic illness, it's never the same. It changes day to day. Mm-hmm. And so likewise, for being a caregiver, I have to learn how to manage it in a different way. And likewise, our daughter is adjusting to the different changes that we're having to make to take care of her father. And that can be traumatic. So there's multiple perspectives that you're dealing with when it comes to trauma, when it comes to being a mom, when it becomes to being a caregiver. And it really comes down to you taking the first step and really prioritizing on a daily basis your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self-care. So plug back into your congregation of faith, reach out to mental services, leverage it there. And if you can't, I know from my church, we have a clinic that we are trying to actively serve, at least in our community, people that are just in that margin where they can't quite qualify for Medicaid, but they still need those services. So there's resources out there. So don't think that because you don't have insurance or you don't qualify for Medicaid or Medicare or something like that. There are nonprofits out there that will try to help you get the same kind of service that you do. Like the clinic that my church has, they have it set up just like an actual clinic and doctor's office. They want you to feel like you're normal and you're still getting the same things, but you're not having to worry about the stress of that huge copay if you can't afford it. Okay. So be open and be creative and do some research. That's the first and foremost things, and try things. Okay. Part of figuring things out is going to take an ounce of curiosity and an ounce of just trial and error. Okay. If you try something and it doesn't serve you, ditch it and move on. And don't let yourself fall into the rabbit hole of, oh, I tried something, it didn't work, I'm a horrible mom, or I can't get through my journey. That's a bunch of baloney. It just means that you haven't found your sweet spot yet. Okay? Again, what works for us won't 100% work for you. But here's the foundation that we're trying to give you that's realistic, that's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Kristina and I both teach and train and coach from the standpoint of, let's look at what your situation is and how we can tweak our programs to meet your needs in a realistic way. Finding a healthy balance. That's the tagline for my business. You guys know that so well. Finding a healthy balance. What does that look like for you in your mental, emotional, and spiritual journey? And healing, and especially for this episode, healing your trauma. What is the realistic balance that works for you in handling your trauma? And it's okay if it's going to take a few tries. Kristina didn't have it figured out in one day. I didn't have it figured out in the first 6 months. I have to say I'm a lot more aware and better off now 2 years in than I was 2 years ago. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So it's going to take some trial and error. It's going to mean that you're going to have to be flexible, and you might have to get creative. Okay. Even the mainstream approaches don't work for you at all. Maybe Kristina's programs or my programs don't totally work for you, but there's there's little nuggets in there that you do need, and you need to blend that with other things. And here's the other thing, but I'll say in closing that it's okay to have more than one resource. I have my business coach and my productivity coach for handling my business, but then I have my mastermind that I'm being trained in. But then I have, for other support, I have my church and my mom's group over there. I have that. And then I have some other close friends that are really important to me. And then I've, utilized counseling like I said in the past. So there's more than one way to do it. Okay. It's up to you to figure out the blend, if you will, of ideas and resources that work for you. And it's going to look different for everybody. And it's going to look different in every season that you're in. It's not going to stay the same. So don't expect to go in thinking, okay, if I create this plan, I'm set for life. That is not the case. You're going to have to tweak as things change and as things come up. So I'm going to definitely, I know in my brain, I'm already processing it. I know I'm going to have to do some shifting with finding that healthy balance as I'm navigating into this new caregiving season. And I know Kristina, if and when she does become a mother and a wife, even though she's done all this inner work, which has helped her and will help her long term, when you go through new experiences, I guarantee you she will still have moments of feeling triggered or overwhelmed and figure out, okay, this is what I wanted, but now that I'm actually in that situation, it's different because I'm actually experiencing it, and I'm seeing these other things come up that I need to process, and that is fine. Okay, so Kristina, where can people find you?
So you can find me on my website, www.triplecokl.com. I always have a pop-up. I also have that gift for your audience as well. I would love to have you on my email list. I highly believe in email these days. I think it's really important. And I have two different blogs that I write. I always have freebies for you guys, and I love to keep you updated on the books. The first one's coming in spring 2023. Super stoked about that. And always happy to connect. And I'm on IG too. I'm building that following, like we all are, slowly but surely. And yeah, it's been amazing to be here with you. And I'm always happy to hear from you, either DM or via email.
Yeah,
My email's on my website too, I believe. If you have personal questions, because I realize inner child work is really, really deep and it's really big. And I'm always happy to share and connect to you with people and whatnot. But I do strongly believe in the books I'm writing. I really genuinely believe in communication and identifying with our feelings. Because when we identify with our feelings, it does create an intimacy. And when you create that intimacy, you're able to step back and acknowledge, okay, this is how I got triggered. This is why I'm feeling this way. And you're able to make choices. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that I don't ever get triggered. I do, but it makes me step back and make choices. Like, okay, you know what? Maybe I just don't go to there. Maybe I'll go this place, or maybe I don't spend time with this person, or, maybe I do have a further conversation with this person. There's so many different choices that we can make and take responsibility for those choices and stay true to ourselves. And like I said, I'm super excited to share these books with you guys. It really is like my heart and soul. And it's a big part of my journey.
good.
And
Well,
I'm
thank
excited
you
to
for
share it
being
with
on
all of
here.
you.
Guys, so if you aren't following Kristina here on Instagram, be sure to follow her. I will have details in the show notes, both here on Instagram and Anchor and YouTube. All the details will be there, so you can follow Kristina and follow up with her via email or DM if you're interested. Also, I will include a link to her freebie, so be sure to check out that for that. And then also join me on Monday. I know our schedule's gotten a little off this week because I've been sick, but on Monday I will be having Judy Hewitt as my special guest, and we'll be back to our normal time of 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the podcast episodes. So if you were listening and you want to be able to catch up on previous episodes, be sure to get on my email list. My freebie right now is my daily checklist planner. And when you get on the email list, you will get notified via email when the podcast is up and when I have episodes, when episodes are posted on my YouTube, Anchor, and Spotify, as well as on my website. And if you're in a season where you're really struggling with your motherhood and caregiving journey, the waitlist is still open for my Finding Your Balance program. Doors open on Monday. So it's been a little crazy, but I'm still going to be taking new students if you're interested in getting into my program. And also be sure to just reach out if you have questions. I do have a link in my bio and also on my website for questions that you can submit if there's a specific motherhood, caregiving, or self-care question that you have. I would be happy to address it. And can also, if you have a specific question for any of my upcoming guests that you would like to submit, please do so. That's why we're here. I'm trying to give you guys access and awareness to other resources that are out there, professionals that can help you with motherhood, with caregiving, and your self-care, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, for listening. And if you are struggling today, know that you are not alone. We're doing the best we can, and nobody knows our families better than you do. And be sure to follow Kristina for more amazing tips on dealing with trauma and learning to ride your bike after trauma. All right, guys, take care.
Thank you.